Hello and welcome to the Accessibility Guide channel. Today we're going to be looking all about table accessibility. In today's video, I'm going to make a table accessible in Adobe Acrobat Pro, and we're going to cover topics like using the reading order tool to tag individual cells, setting the scope of individual cells, fixing row and column span problems, and adding what's called associated header IDs for a header and data cell connection. This video is going to be rather long as I'm keeping many of the pauses in my speaking while doing some of the demo. The purpose of this is to show the different avenues I took and the different things that I did in between certain aspects of making this table accessible. The table in this example is not currently accessible. The first thing that I like to do is review the tags panel first. So to do that, I'm going to open up the tags panel. With the tags panel open, I can now determine that there are no tags available. So at this point, there's a few different methods I can try. We're going to use a completely manual method for tagging this PDF today. The first thing I'm going to do is create a tags root by right-clicking and selecting Create Tags Root. Then I'm going to right-click again and select New Tag, and we're going to start with Document, as this tag is going to be the parent tag for all of our child tags throughout this. Next, I want to begin tagging the text from this page, and I'm going to do this manually, so let's select the Accessibility button, and then I'm going to select reading order. This brings up the reading order tool. I can begin dragging my mouse around content and applying the different tags that I want to use. So for table accessibility, I'm going to make that in H1. Then I'm going to tag this text as text paragraph. And then finally, let's select this entire table and select table. Now, sometimes this step works and sometimes it doesn't. Let's take a look at the tags panel. The first thing I notice is all of the tags I created are not nested under the document tag, so I'm going to move those underneath the document tag, and then we're just going to navigate some of this content. I'm going to close the reading order tool so that I can better view the content on this page. And I have a table tag, and let's start to walk through some of this content. But before we get to that, I'd like to remind you to please hit that like and subscribe button for more up-to-date accessibility best practices. Now back to the video. So my very first table row was properly recognized with table headers. And then it appears that the next row is all gobbledygook. It is trying to make a row out of the different text fields, versus what I actually need is all of this content to be in the same row. So we have quite a bit of work to fix this. On the bright side, heading row was properly tagged. I think the fastest method to fix this particular problem is to use the reading order tool again. So I'm going to launch the reading order tool, and I'm going to deselect show table cells and show tables and figures because it's a little challenging to see all of the text. I'm going to select all the text that I want to be in one section, and then I'm going to select text paragraph. And it looks like it put all of that content into a P tag, which is a good start. So let's do these other ones for the first row. I'm going to select the text that should be together and select text paragraph. Let's select the next group of text paragraph. We now have all of our data cells in the right, at least in the same groupings. So what I'm going to do is clean up the tags panel a little bit, delete some of these table tags out, and then it looks like some of the other content was added to a different cell. This also cleared up some of these extra table rows that we have. So as you begin tagging the content, it will reduce the amount of rows in the table. I'm going to delete these empty rows as we go, and I am cutting and pasting using the arrows on using the keyboard, Control X and Control V. All right, so let's do a quick recap. We have our top row with our 4 heading cells, and then we have row number 2 with our text now all grouped properly. So what I'm going to do now is select these 4 P tags, right-click in the tags panel, select properties, and I'm going to change the type from paragraph to TD and select close. This changes those P tags to table data cells. All right, and we have 1 row down, 2 rows down. We have a few more to go. I personally think the fastest method is to use the reading order tool, so we're just going to keep doing that. I'm going to select all of this text from each cell and tag it as text paragraph. Okay, now I can come over and clean up the tags panel. The first thing that I want to do is just make sure that all of my cells are in the right row. And to do that, I need to go through all of these tags to find them. And when I find, for example, this cell, I'm simply going to cut and paste it to the right location. Now in this example, I'm actually going to leave these blank cells in for, all right, we have the 3rd row completed, the 4th row completed. Okay, let's clean up the 3rd row first. We are going to make all of these cells as table data cells. And then let's move on to this other table row, and we are going to change this from paragraph to table data cell and select close. And then we have one more row that has 5 cells. This is not a header cell, so I'm going to change this from a TH to a TD using my keyboard, and it now looks like all of our table rows are at least properly formatted. So at this point, I want to run the accessibility checker and just see what's happening with my document. So to do that, I'm going to select the accessibility button and then select accessibility check. All right, it's telling me that my table has failed regularity, which means there is an issue with the amount of rows and columns. They all need to be the same. I suspect it's this TD down here at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is launch the reading order tool, right click inside of my table and select table editor. And this will allow me to get a breakdown of some of the cells. It also looks like this very first one is a little off. So I'm going to right click where there appears to be 2 cells together and select table cell properties. And for some reason, this has a column span of 1 or of 2. I want this to be a column span of 1. Timeout. I had to go through every single one of those cells, right click them, select table cell properties, and ensure that our row and column span were properly set to 1 for each. In some situations, when you have a table that has a merged cell, this is a time where you can play with the column and row span. But for this simple table, I had to ensure that we had a 1 and 1 across every single one of the cells. So that was a lot of work, but basically what I did was try to right click these cells to determine which one had a column span of more than 1. I could tell something was funky because the cells on the page visually were all over the place. So I did have to clean that up. Let's go ahead and run the accessibility checker one more time. And finally, we have the regularity passing. Let's set the scope of this table. I'm going to select the reading order tool, right-click the table, and select table editor. From here, I'm going to select each one of these table header cells at the very top of the table. I'm using the shift key and clicking each one so that they are all selected. Then I'm going to right-click and select table cell properties. Then I'm going to ensure that I have selected header cell and change my scope from none to column. And if I did have, some tables have table headers on the row side also. They don't in this one, but if I wanted to, I could select these table data cells and right click them, select table cell properties, select header cell and choose row. I'm not going to do that, but I want to just show that you could set that up if you had a little bit more of a complex table. So let's go back to the tags panel and do a quick summary. I have a table tag with 5 different rows in it. Each row contains either a table header or a table data cell, and each TH and TD cell contains the contents of that cell. As I navigate through all of the rows, we can determine that this table has now been made accessible. Now I want to take it one step farther. I want to make a data connection between our table header and the contents of this PDF. So to do that, I need to make sure my reading order tool is open, and I'm going to right click into the table and select Table Editor. Then I'm going to right click again and select Auto Generate Header Cell IDs. This is going to provide a name to each one of my heading tags, and then I can select, holding the Shift key, all of the table data cells underneath this hyperlinks heading, and I'm going to right click and select Table Cell Properties, and under Associated Header Cell IDs, I'm going to select the plus button, and then I'm going to choose row 1, cell 1 hyperlink as the header ID for those cells. And then I need to do the same thing for all of the cells underneath headings. I'm holding the Shift key and selecting each one. Right click, select Table Cell Properties, and do the plus button next to the associated header cell IDs. And I'm going to select the next one, which is R1C2 headings, and select OK. And if you wanted to, you could give these custom names. That way they're easy to find. All right, one more set. I'm going to hold the Shift key, select all of the cells, right click, Table Cell Properties, and then change the associated header cell ID to R1C4 tables, and select OK. So this was a pretty long video on how to make an accessible table. It's very important, though, to know a lot of these tools that we went over today, because in some situations you may need to apply them. So if you enjoyed this video today of how to make tables accessible, please hit that like and subscribe button for more personalized tips and instruction on accessibility best practices.